Yeah, guess who's back, y'all? Yeah, y'all motherfucking haters better stand back. CNC's back on a new track. Yeah, we're back, but we're back with a new act. You know, I was down for a while. Many of y'all sat there and smiled. But I'm here, I'm back. It's been a while. This is a story about cultivation. Your rights, my rights, the law, and where we go together. One way or another. Cultivation of cannabis will be part of human nature. Peace.
Welcome back to another edition of Cannabis in Canada with Jason Wilcox, coming to you from British Columbia, Canada. Here today to do a little Q&A with Jay. You know, I figured let's ease back into this slowly. Yes, I'm medicated and educating, you know. I do smoke all day, but I'm not stoned to shit. I operate daily as I would as if I was on morphine or oxycodone or whatever the doctors may want to put me on for my pain. But certainly it's a medication. It's not about, oh, that guy's all stoned, he can't talk, he can't think. That's not the case. The reason my brain don't work so good is from being sick for 19 years and taking toxic medications to stay alive. You know, certainly not from the cannabis. So that was just a little hater feedback. I wanted to get that out there. Anyway, starting with Jedi Knight, who sent me a question some time ago. I didn't put down the dates. Actually, this one's only 4 days old. It says, "Hi Jason, is it possible to take clones from a plant that has flowered, harvested, and put back into veg? I mean, genetic type is great, and what you want to keep it." Well, you're right. And what I have to say about that is, you know, if you regenerate a plant or bring it back, take it from flower, and then revert it back to a vegetative state, extremely stressful. You're likely going to destabilize your genetics. Okay, your phenotypes might change a little bit. This is a dangerous way. You could hermy your weed. That's a possibility. But at the same time, if you haven't got the lineage, if you haven't got the seeds, the backing, the other stuff that you need to be able to redo that strain, you know, you're cloning for the purpose, and you're regenerating that mother or that clone for the sole you're regenerating the mother for the sole purpose to save your genetics. And to save your genetics is very important. So I would take a shot at saving them either way and just hope that they stay stable, you know, and do it with the most delicate of care and keep the stress on the plants down, keep the environmental stress down. Don't hit them heavy with newts. Just baby that as you transition it back, and allow it about probably 2-3 weeks to fully transition before you're even going to see. You'll notice stuff, what your whatever white hairs, whatever will just kind of die off, and you'll see new vegetative growth start. And you want to wait until that process is completed before you clone. So in other words, if you're going to regenerate it and revert it back, then wait 2 weeks. Before just trying to take any clones from it or anything else, because you might then, in the process of going from flower back into a vegetative state, the plant's genetics and compounds, what's going on in there scientifically, I can't explain. I'm certainly not a chemist, but or a botanist, but what's going on in there certainly would be some sort of change. So it wouldn't ideally be the best time to take a clone, kind of like taking a clone from an immature plant that hasn't showed its sex yet. Anyway, I'm straying off topic, but Jedi Knight, there's your answer that I have for you. The best thing I can come up with for now. I better put this out or I can't focus. Okay, so yeah, it's too hard to hold paper and smoke at the same time. So another one here, 420 Devin G. Okay, you asked me, dry sifting the granular head. You said, I'm sorry sir, but you're wrong. Butane extraction, ISO or CO2, is the purest form. I would have to argue. Once again, dry sifting is the purest form because it's pure. Now, if you're talking about extracting to the purest trichome and getting the most cleanest extraction, then it would be water-based, which would be water extraction, bubble bags, water hash, bubble hash, whatever you want to call it. That is the only pure one. Now, when you start using butane and iso, you're going to have a residue left over. This is a fact. Okay? Iso would be better. If you can use iso to make butter, fabulous. But if you're going to use butane, if you use the wrong butane, you can destroy your lungs. Not to mention what else would happen to you. You want at least 5 times filtered butane. So you want to know what you're doing and get your proper information if you're going to start playing around with such extracts as butane, and understand what the residues are, understand what mass spectrometers and what people have been doing to study these issues, so we know what's pure and what's not. I was just referring to the fact that for thousands of years, people have been using silk screens and taking their harvested bud, throwing it on there and sifting it, dry sifting it, and taking the granular heads and the stalks, whatever they can get out of there. And sure, they get a little plant material. Who cares? The old Moroccan hash and Colombian gold and shit that we used to get back in the 70s, where the hell even came from? That was dry sifting. There was no butane extraction. There was no friggin' CO2 bubble bags extractions. They sat there with big blankets, one guy on each end, and they were flipping it all day while they made their big extractions. That's just the way it went back then. So, with all due respect, I just want to make sure, because I don't want our viewers to get confused in any fashion. The purest extraction ever is going to be a water extraction, because you're separating the trichomes from the plant matter and all that's with the plant matter, and all that may have been sprayed on the plant, all the dust that may have landed on the plant, anything that may have happened during the plant's life, not a factor, unless it's coming up through the roots and into the trichome, which is a whole different issue, genetic issue. But again, extraction, staying on topic, extractions, purest, water extraction by bubble bag. And then the other old-fashioned pure way of extracting, and when I say pure, it's because it's cannabis only. It's not butane, and it's not isopropyl. Okay? When we start using chemicals, there's always a residue. You can never 100% clean it off. So, I just wanted to clear that up. It's a very good question though, and I think it's a very informative question, especially because there's been people in Canada who've blown themselves up making butter. It's the reason I took my movie down. I thought I'd teach people how to make it, but then I thought I don't want a bunch of kids going out using the wrong plastic, getting cheap, buying the cheaper plastic instead of the chemical plastic, and after 3 extractions blowing up, and lighting themselves on fire. I don't want that on my head. So anybody testing around with butane extractions, I suggest doing it outside and making sure you got a well-ventilated area and nobody smoking a cigarette. Anyway, or joints. So next question, NorCal Farmin, NorCal Farmin, I guess is the username. Okay, what temp is dry room at when you hang for your drying flowers? So what temperature should your room be at? In my own opinion, and one thing that should be noted here, all these answers are in my own opinion. I know some of y'all are going to come back and say, no, but you do it this way, no, but you do it that way. It's your opinion. It's okay. It's sharing information. People can take what they want based on what they've seen. And when you see it with your own eyes, in my previous videos, it shows it. And that's part of the reason I look forward to what's coming up in the in the fall time, and especially in the new year. Some of the new movies and some of the new ways that we're going to be able to present stuff. But anyway, back to this question here. Drying the flowers, okay. Room temperature, ideal. Dark or cool. Actually a cool dry room would be better. Most important is to remember when you hang those plants, you got a lot of humidity in that room. Now personally for me, a lot of growers would disagree, but I'm telling you, my product's flushed to below 100 ppm. You can never hit bottom line 0, but I flush to below 100 ppm. Now when I get my runoff below 100 and my dipstick doesn't flash at all, that's when I hang. So I don't really worry about how fast they dry. Now, back to the room. This is where I put in a dehumidifier. I know I've just added a bunch of moisture. There's not adequate fans in the drying room. The drying room's just a room. It doesn't have any intake and exhaust. There's no air exchange. So I needed to make sure that I pull that water out to prevent any possibility of mold. As well, I put in an oscillating fan that just goes nice and slow, on low, and just slowly breezes across your flowers. You know, your trees. I hang mine upside down on a rope by the tree. A lot of people say, oh, what's the reason for hanging them upside down? Why do you do that? You know, that's actually a good question. It might actually be one of my questions, but however, if it is, I'll just skip it. When you hang them upside down, again, from my own research and from my own experience, if you leave the leaves on, what happens is if you hang it upside down, the leaves come down and they coat over and they protect all the inner trichomes and all the inner bud, and they work like that for those that don't trim their leaves off. If you trim your leaves off, you'll cut your drying time down by at least 24 to 48 hours. So again, it comes down to the person. But when it comes to hanging upside down, it was all about just cutting and racking. They did it with tobacco, they started doing it this way. Then they started baling tobacco. I'm sure if they started curing cannabis on a mass level, they'd probably bale it and stick it in a cool storage somewhere. I'm not sure what the big shows are going to be like. That we're definitely going to cover that in other shows. So yeah, room temperature or a cool dry. Most important, it stays dark, no light leaks, and as well that you have air circulation in the room. You don't allow for stale air or moist stale air to just sit there and hover, because you know, you're going to end up with moisture issues. And moisture issues then lead to mold issues, and you could end up walking in and finding, you know, white spots all over your hanging plants, and you wouldn't be too happy. So and again, upside down, leaving the leaves on, that's solely for the purpose, in my own opinion, of protecting, in my own research, of protecting the bud. That way when you do your final trimming, you just take those leaves off and you can just see all the trichomes glisten because they protected that bud. So people say, well, by hanging it, you know, you're not protecting the trichomes. That's where the leaves come in. And as well, it's only common sense when you're drying a plant, especially after it's been hanging for at least 24 hours, that the outside's starting to get a little bit drier. Don't bang stuff around, especially after it's been drying for 4 or 5 days. You don't walk in there and smack your plants around, or you're going to have trichomes all over the floor from the outside. That's a whole different issue. But anyway, that's it. So cool, dark, dry room, ready to go. Make sure there's no light leaks. Use a dehumidifier. You know, you'll be pulling water out of there. It'll surprise you. You really only need it for the first couple of days, and then you can just let it go. And the oscillating fan, keeping, you know, air movement in the room. That's very important. You don't have to necessarily have an intake and exhaust. You just need to have air movement, and that'll work fine. Then it comes down to curing. You know, curing your weeds is a whole different issue. But as far as drying your flowers, that's how I do it. That's what works for me, and in my own opinion, what works the best. So, you know, to each their own. Fourth question. This is from Dose them all. Another subscriber. You don't have to pH before soaking pellets. Nice video, and I cut the tips off leaves so they don't grow anymore. It focuses on other parts of the plant. That's two questions. First one, pH before soaking pellets. If you're talking about pea pellets, they're neutral 7. There is no pH. Okay? So you really don't need to, and you're going to be using rooting solution and other stuff. Depending on how advanced you are in your growing and what kind of tools you're using, and whether you're using stuff at the germination stage or at the rooting stage, rooting hormones, etc. Some of the newer organic stuff that's been found, or whether you're using willow tree extracts, you know, willow tree works great for rooting and it's organic. Most important, peat pellets by themselves, specifically what you're referring to here is pellets, have a neutral pH of 7, which is why I suggest people test it. The other thing about peat pellets, a lot of people use warm water to heat them up because they expand faster and they can get to cloning faster. One thing I suggest people be alert to is that peat retains heat. Remember that. Okay, I learned this the hard way. Peat retains heat. You can sit there 10 minutes, the outside feels totally cold, take your thermometer that you should have with your pH reader or whatever, stick it into that center of that peat pellet and check the temperature, and you're gonna find that you will kill your clone and it ain't gonna root. You know, you might get a couple that are strong enough to pull through somehow the heat, but that's something that I learned about peat, so you need to be careful with it, and it does have a neutral pH. Now, question 2, it says, I cut the tips off my leaves so they don't grow anymore. It focuses on other parts of the plant. You're talking about rerouting the hormones of the plant. Now, if you want to reroute the floral hormones, okay, which is what I've taught in my training videos, when you top a plant, you reroute the hormones. That's why you get 2 heads when you cut the one. You know, this is again diffusing hormones to grow another direction. It doesn't work the same with leaves. You can cut the tips off your leaves, it doesn't do nothing other than stay cut off. It's not going to reroute nothing back any direction. This happens more with branching. Now, if you cut the branch off, you'll get 2 branches, whether it's lateral branching or whether it's essential. Okay, whether it's your main stem going up or whether it's your lateral branching, doesn't matter. If you cut those, you'll reroute and get 2 heads. But when it comes to leaves, it doesn't happen that way. When it comes to cloning, the leaves, when you see them cut there, different people do it for different reasons. For me, it's solely so that I know this was the bottom leaf and I can see when new growth is there. And it's relatively easy. You know, I don't have to wait to see the roots pop out to know that they've been successfully rooted. So, but again, to each their own. There's 1,001 different cloning ways, methods, and rooms, sizes, shapes, you know, mediums that are used for cloning. You know, some people simply use perlite. You know, it just all depends. Are you a hydroponic grower? Are you a pot grower? You know, using different mediums. You know, whether they're soilless or whether you're using soil. You know, what is it that you're doing? Are you an outdoor grower? All these things come into play. So, no, cutting your leaves doesn't do anything. Like I said, for me personally, in my own opinion, anybody who wants to post cutting leaves and what that might do by cutting the ends off, please do. Please post a link to any, you know, verification so that we can go look on the web and verify, and then I can actually retract what I'm saying now. But what I'm saying now is based on my own research. Sorry, my voice is going on me. Based on my own research and years of experience in working with definitely different methodologies of growing. So we're going to move on. Question 5 here is from Jamie Blees. I'm sorry if some of these people, I'm sorry to some of the subscribers here if I'm late getting back to you, but I was sick for 8 months and I'm going through about 800 comments and questions, and I'm just doing 10 at a time. So, but at least it gives me a show to do for a little while for those that want to listen to me. All said, it says here, Jamie Blees says, "Hi Jason, I've got a flowering female. The plant's quite big. Was just wondering if I could put it in an indoor grow because my weather is terrible." Taking a plant from outdoors to indoors, the only thing that I would suggest, yes, you can do it. Okay, it's going to stress the plant out, and the plant's going to take a couple weeks to start actually, you know, start growing again. Depending on what you use. There are, if you're growing with chemicals already, there's stuff like Super Thrive, getting a good quality B1 product to be able to help bring them out, keep them out of shock and help bring them out of shock from transferring from outdoors to in. Part 2 of that is when you bring a plant from outdoors to your indoor garden, if you've got other plants already in that indoor garden, then you might want to sterilize the plant outside just for safety factor, you know, before you bring it into your room. Sterilize it by getting yourselves like some neem oil or whatever of some sort, Einstein oil, whatever works for you, and go ahead and put that on and spray your plants and make sure, and as well, if you got something for aphids, spray the top layer of your soil. The aphids live in your soil. They might die on your leaves, but they'll live in the soil and then they'll come back. So you want to find something you can run through your soil. And basically what I'm saying is give your outdoor plant a bath, purify it before introducing it to your room. In fact, humans, as growers, we should be making sure that we change our clothes, wash our hands, you know, make sure our hair doesn't have all kinds of dust or any dust bugs. We haven't just come from the bush before we go in our grow room. It's the best way to get some sort of breakout. I've seen everything from scales on plants to mites to people that have, including myself, who've had to deal with mice when mice break into the house and then they eat your plants. They literally eat your plants. So I did a movie on it. Check it out. It's battling mice. But yeah, those are the only things. Make sure you bath it, secure it. Understand that when you bring it in, it's not just going to look good the next day. If you got it under the right light spectrum, you got it in the right climate control, right environment, that you have it set for indoor, that your research has brought you to, you know, whether your temperature is 25 during the day, 21 at night, whatever you've got your environmental controls set at, that plant will adapt to. It just needs the time to do it. And it could only take a few days, it could take a few weeks. It really depends on the products being used, the stability of the genetics, and where the plant's at. If the plant's being attacked by anything, any sort of infestation, that's a whole different issue, because then you have to deal with that before as well. There's two stressors. So, like I said, bathe the plant, secure it, bathe it not only on top, bathe the soil, make sure your soil's purified, just in case, and then introduce it to your indoor garden. I hope that helps, Jamie. Question 6. Now this is from a guy called Eddie Frizzle. Now he's made lots of comments. He's made a comment about me being Canadian, like, oh yeah, well this guy's Canadian, he's high and doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, I am Canadian, I am medicated, but I do know what I'm talking about. And you know, it says here that in another video that you watched, it said hanging the bud upside down actually messes with the THC and the trichomes. Why do you hang them upside down? I've already addressed this earlier, so that's kind of where I got that from. Again, hanging them upside down, in my own opinion, the leaves fall down over the buds, causing kind of like a blanket shelter, okay, over them. And that came from the old school. In the new school, guys are trying to dry it as fast as they can and get it out of their house before the cops kick the damn door in. You know, and medical growers, they don't want to get ripped, so they're doing the same thing, getting it done before the rippers kick their door in. You know, there's a lot of different issues going on for reasons why people are trying to speed up how much time it takes to dry, and you know, and then, you know, curing, and even if they cure, most people rack and pack. They don't even cure their dough. You know, and rack and pack is the stuff you get. It smells, you don't get no smell. It smells like hay. Smoke's great. You know, it might even be burning nice and clean, but it still has no smell. And any true organic, good, properly flushed cannabis, any strain, will have an organic, fruity smell to it. Okay, you'll get that. That's your terpenes. Your flavonoids. Again, these are the essential oils that reside outside the trichome. Those reside for the taste. You should have a taste. That's where you get all these different names from, but you can get tastes of different things, apples, blueberries. You know, you look at all your different blue strains, they're all from the blueberry strain. It's because the taste when you smoked it was like blueberry, when it's done right, and when it's packaged right. If you cure your product properly, burp it in the jars like you're supposed to, I've done movies on this, and store it in a cool, dark place, in an airtight jar, it will smell as fresh as the day you harvested a year later. I've tested it. You know, it just needs to be, a lot of people don't want to do it, it's extra time, and there's a risk factor. If you forget to burp your jar, you can very easily mold your cannabis. So, anyway, I hope that again, E. Frizzy, I don't know what your issue is with Canada, but I have no issue with the U.S., so, you know, to my U.S. friends, love y'all, respect y'all, and, yeah. So we'll move on to Chevy Pete. Now, Chevy Pete, your comment, our question was, if the trichome turns amber, isn't that isn't that so that the THC deforms in CB or CBN? I always learn that if you wait till 90% milky and 10% amber, more CBD and more CBN and CBD will make the THC effect last longer and stronger. The CBD and CBN don't affect the THC at all. They have their own medical properties. and certainly having higher levels for pain management, fabulous. Okay, it really comes down to the person, the strain, the grower. Um, Nobody's wrong. You're 100% right. 90% milky, 10% amber. If that works for you, that's fabulous. When I've talked about amber in the past, when people talk about, oh, well, you shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that, there is no right or wrong answer. If you want to go to amber, the only point that I was making is that when they get to amber, that's your final warning, because you're at the point of degradation of the plant. So if you continue to try to get more out of that plant, you're liable to have it hermia out and do what's natural in nature, and it will try to pollinate. Okay, so you got to be careful of degradation. That's the only issue I brought up around amber. Of course, we all go to a point of amber and a heavy milky, you know, and we want to have some amber. I'm just alerting people to the caution that going to amber is a little risky, but to each their own. It's, you know, for me, I'd rather go 50-50, like 50% amber, 50% more milky, and no higher. And sometimes, depending on, there was one strain, God, that one didn't work if you took it longer. It was better that it would be harvested at the very earliest stages of milkiness in the tip of the trichome. We need to remember the majority of our medications reside in that little ball on top of the trichome. The stalk that goes down, which I'll show in a picture here, there's a stalk that goes down, and that has only so much medicinal properties. The majority are in the head of the trichome. Okay, outside of the trichome, the leaf matter, none of that stuff has much medicinal properties in it in comparison to the trichome. Now, if you're talking about vitamins, omega-3, 6, and 9, you'll find those in your leaves. Now, when you're talking about conversion, and you might be talking about decarboxylation, this actually even happens when you're drying your cannabis. Your trichomes go through a change, your cannabis goes through a change. If you heat your cannabis up to X temperature, you blow off, you know, the atoms. And anyway, long process, short, has nothing to do really in the end here, unless there's something that I don't know, metaphorically speaking, about botany, that somehow the amber affects. I would say that, yeah, it would increase the CBD and CBN, but it wouldn't affect the THC. I mean, your THC levels, if anything, would probably reduce. You get more of a body, less of a mind. Where if it was premature, you know, and being, then you would get more of a heady, rapid high, and sometimes even what some people would say a better high. But from a medical standpoint, you'd get no pain relief, in my own opinion. Again, strain specific. What I like is how a lot of dispensaries, and hopefully we get to keep them in Canada, a lot of dispensaries have their stuff put through mass spectrometers. So you know how much THC, CBN, CBD is in the final product. That is important. I wish they'd also put down how well it's been flushed and so forth, but that stuff hasn't been posted yet, but I'm sure as we standardize more, that will happen. Of course, we know the personal production issues. Another big issue of mine, we'll be doing an update on that as well over the weekend, so stay tuned for that. I'm going to move on to the last two questions. I hope that helps, Chevy Pete. You know, if you have a link, again, that can take me to an article, a document, something that can explain to me how, you know, reaching the point of amber or getting to the point of degradation of the plant either increases or decreases THC, CBD, and CBN levels. But keep in mind that they don't affect one another. They work in concert together, but they don't affect one another. There's certain levels of each one in each plant. That's predisposed by genetics. Okay, number 8. I've read that learning the leaves, or sorry, this is user subscriber name is I don't know you nor do you. So whatever. I've read that leaving the leaves on and curing it slowly can make the bud sweeter. To be honest, you want to make your bud sweeter? Grow organic. It's a fact. okay? Leaving your leaves on to cure, that's risky, unnecessary. You're adding more moisture to the plant for no reason. Those leaves, if anything, the smaller ones that have trichomes, okay, those should be being set aside to dry in a different manner so that you can use them for extraction. You know, they get to a certain point. Yeah, there's no way that I would cure ever. I can't think of ever any time that I would even consider putting curing the leaves. I use leaves for extractions. That's it. Especially when you do your trimming, you got your AAA bag, you got your AA bag, and then you got your single A bag, which is your best trim. And some of that stuff you can smoke, and it's as good as your regular cannabis, except a leafy taste. So anyway, you don't cure with your leaves. And those who aren't sure what I'm talking about curing, Google curing or check out my curing movies on the channel. We went into detail. I'm going to be doing another curing movie coming up. Being a little more clear-headed now and doing a lot better with my health, I'll be able to explain it again in detail and demonstrate in detail about how the stalk in the beginning, when you put it in the jar, will bend. Okay, there will be moisture in the center, what people often complain about. The outside will be bone dry, the center will still have a little bit of moisture. This is why we cure. That's what you want. At that stage is the perfect time to put it in a glass jar, mason jar, seal it, let it go for about 12 hours. Burp it, meaning open it, let the air out, okay? If need be, dump the buds out carefully onto something, and then let them sit out for an hour or so, 2 hours, air out, and then put them back in, rejar them, another 12 hours, burp them again, okay, until that stalk snaps. When it snaps, curing's done. But certainly not with any leaves, okay? Only with the buds. Finished product, trimmed, finished product is the best to cure, okay? It's the best to run down. All said, that's, again, my own opinion. I've brought curing out on this channel in 2007. And I remember a lot of people thought I was completely out of my mind, and it's simply because you're not seeing it a lot in clubs and you're not seeing it a lot in other places because people simply don't want the extra work. There's enough work already involved in growing cannabis that they don't want to add more work by curing it. But on a personal level, I would cure my dope, and I don't even like using the word dope, I would cure my medicine. And I would love to be able to cure the medicine for patients so that they have the best and most optimal cannabis possible. Anyway, number 9, it says, Jason, thanks for answering my question about the 4th kind of cannabis. I was going to say Afghanica when I was asked, but wasn't sure. I also wondered, what's the word of the light meter show? Wondered how much better the mylar okay, he's talking about for an outdoor show, how much better the mylar would work versus the white plastic. The white plastic, for one, is white on one side, it's black on the other, for a reason. It's light proof. The mylar is a lot harder to work with, and if it's outdoors, unless you're working on an indoor shed outdoors, then it depends if you're in a tent or not. If you're talking about making the canopy out of plastic, then I would suggest using the what you call the plastic. There's also what's called reflective film, a little more durable product. They have 3 or 4 different kinds. Very good. Doesn't show hot spots. So if you got people with rip guns coming by trying to find your lights, they can't really see through it. You want to check them out. Check out reflective film. Just Google that, and then see they'll have like Diamondback and these different ones. A little more expensive, but if it's going to give you the best reflection and durability, and as well as keep away unwanted attention, sometimes it's worth paying the extra money. You certainly don't want to be on the receiving end of a rip team. And then on the first one, if you guys were wondering, the fourth question on cannabis is strains. How many varieties of strains do we have? Well, we have our, Cannabis afganica from the Afghan region. We have Cannabis indica, which is generally from India. We have Cannabis sativa, which is generally from Thailand and Asia. And then we have our ditchweed, which is ruderalis. Ruderalis is something if you smoke, it'll give you a headache. We even have it growing. Some of you here in BC might remember Tuxedo Time Wort. Well, that was a ruderalis that was from Tuxedo that they crossed with Time Wort, and thus you got Tuxedo Time Wort. But growing it was a bitch, and it was just that ditchweed kind of growth material, but a really good smoke. So some people have played around with using different varieties like that. Generally it's just c-afganica, indica, and sativa. People usually don't even know about c-afganica because they just consider it an indica because it's Afghanistan. But it's actually not, it is its own. If you actually look at the growth, the way that c-afganica strains grow, their leaves are a lot different than both sativa and indica, thus giving them their own variety. And ruderalis similarly grows its own way, and you might find it and say, right on, I found some pretty natural smoke, but you'll know when you smoke it that it's ruderalis. This being said, when it comes to regional outdoor growing, ruderalis have been crossed, even in Ontario. They crossed ruderalis with other strains so that they would grow in that region outdoors. And they lasted right into the first snowfall, and it didn't kill the plants because the ruderalis were already adapted to that region. So that's where your fourth strain comes in. So you got ruderalis, you got Cannabis indica, Cannabis sativa, Cannabis c-afganica. So just wanted to touch on that. And our final one here that we got to go on is, it says, Jason, what specifically, this comes from That's Gangsta. So Jason, what specifically to you do your plants, what specifically do you do to your plants to make them look like actual trees? Or is it just the genetics of the plant? Also, which is better in your opinion, growing from seed or clone? So we got two questions there. First question, how do we make our plants look like trees? I make my plant look like a heart. I can make my plant look like anything I want because of being able to reroute the floral hormones to grow any direction I choose. Again, growing methodologies, not necessary unless you're space restricted. If you have a nice big room, don't touch the fucking plant. Plant it, grow it, harvest it, take good care of it. There's no need to top it, no need to, you might want to top it for whatever reason, but topping and training are used to keep the plant short and make it bigger canopies. Where, for people that are restricted, some people are growing in little closets that are like this high, and not in big rooms. So this is where training comes in, and outdoor shows where guys want to keep their plants only 3 feet off the ground, not 6 or 8 feet or 10 feet off the ground. So that's kind of that's it. And when you say look like trees, I believe that might be you might be inferring, or inferring to the internode spacing. If that's what you're referencing, it might be just because when cannabis is growing under proper light spectrum, you should have close internode spacing. There should be a branch, a branch, a branch, a branch, a branch. It should keep doing that really close, which of course would give the lateral branching a look of a tree, because it doesn't have big, huge spacing. When you see big spacing between the branches, it's because the plant's stretching and it's reaching for light. And it doesn't have the right light spectrum to make it work. That's what's going on with that. So, there's a lot of information in there. This is why we have light testers. This is why we talk about light spectrum. It's very important. You could have the best climate control, the best fans, the best CO2, the best genetics, best soil, but if you haven't got the right light spectrum, you're still not going to have a good product and a good yield. Oh, sorry, not a good product. You're still not going to get a great yield as you would if you had the right light spectrum as well as the right climate control and nutrients and soil or medium, or whatever you're using. Part two, is it the genetics of the plant? Genetics of different plants certainly act generally the same. It just some plants will have different ways of responding. But when it comes to looking like trees, I believe that comes down to internode spacing, because at the same time they could look like some of my really old videos when I was using improper lighting and a little tiny closet. When I started, it was completely different. So you can see there where there was large stretching, big internode spacing. First thing I can diagnose walking in a room is if I see big internode spacing, I know the lights are likely old, outdated, and need to be replaced. Because the plants are stretching. They're not getting optimal light spectrum, which I believe is 1200 lumens per square foot. So if you want to measure it. I'm going off the top of my head with that number, so don't beat me up too bad online with it. Now the other question was also, which is better in your opinion, growing from seed or clone? Like the yields, potency, nug differences. I would say growing from clone is more secure psychologically, and I can get a more, because it's a genetic copy of the mother. So if the mother and other crops have been successful, I have a lot more comfort in that. And it's a lot faster. I don't have to wait. However, when it comes to dealing with growing from seed, there's so many things you have to worry about. One, how stable are the seed genetics? Two, of course, one way of finding that out is counting 10 plants. And then if you've got 5 females, 5 males, awesome. If you got 6 females, 4 males, still awesome. But if you got like 9 females and only 1 male, then you might want to look at instability factors. And again, these are from my research or my own opinion, that's a stability issue. So every time that you go from seed, it's a risk. You don't know what it's going to be in the end. You only know what the sellers tell you about the seed, so you really don't know. Also, it takes 30 days from when you plant it to when you're even able to know whether it's a female or a male, let alone get ready to try and put it into flower for any means. So it's a time issue as well. Now, that being said, from clone, it'll be done fast. From clone, after 30 days, you trip it into flower. After another 60 days, you're going to harvest. So 90 days, you're done, instead of going 100 or 120 days going from seed. However, if you go from seed, you get purity, potency, okay, fresh genetics. So if you get a nice stable mom, save a dad. Take a male, keep it in veg, and save it, so that you can back cross, and get your genetics back later. If the strain and the genetics really works for you, then save the male, save the female if you're growing from seed. And yes, growing from seed is the best. Again, it comes down to, just like curing, how much does the grower want to put into it? How much do you really want to try? How much work are you going to put in? And growing from seed, in my own opinion, that would be the best and optimal, most potent way. Or to grow from seed for the first crop, select your mother. If that genetics works for you, that particular strain, you then take that mother and you clone from that mother. And you do that for maybe 2 years before back crossing to get more seeds. You get a couple thousand seeds, and then you got your strain. And you can grow it again from seed. F1, F2, F3, whatever. How you do your generations of your seeds. Looking up some breeding guides would be good if you're gonna look into what the specifics are. But certainly from seed is always more potent than, because it's a fresh plant. It's never been grown before. The genetics, it's like a new baby, a new human. It's the genetics nobody else has in the world. It's like your thumbprint. And that's why I make that argument. To take away our right to produce is like taking away our right to evolutionary plant research. When plant A and plant B get crossed, you get plant C. Plant C might help me medically. So, it becomes a big issue for me growing, and certainly
Yeah, from seed. I go from seed to clone, you know, and the best homegrown, as Cypress Hill once said. Yeah, no, I would definitely go seed, bring it up to clone, raise it to a mother, take that mother and keep it for 2 years maximum, preferably a year, and then either back cross, okay, or move on to another strain. But you know, if you keep a mother 10 years, people say, oh yeah, my mother's still fine, it's great, but you know, the reality is that they become a little more weak, and potency begins to drop off just a little bit, and this happens over time, and of course the plant stability. So anyway, I thought I would drop in. This has been long enough. I've been gabbing long enough. I wanted to come back slow, but also answer the questions, and that you guys know I'm medicated off the top of my head, and this is stuff that is from research and years of work, okay, that has been put into this. You know, the comments and the negativity and the crap that gets put out there, you know, I feel sorry for you guys because you guys can't grow and you can't experience what I've been able to, you know, and what I'm trying to teach you and trying to help share with you. And at the same time, I get taught a lot by you guys. So I love y'all, respect y'all, and we'll see you in the next movie. This is Jason Wilcox signing out. Cheers.